As someone that's owned a handheld gaming system of some kind since the original Game Boy, I've always been drawn to the ability to game on the go. In those days, it would be hard to go a single day without seeing groups of kids running around with link cables in tow, trying to battle and trade with their friends. Link cables are a thing of the past, but now we're at the point where you can hold over 40 years of gaming history in the palm of your hand with the ability to run current-gen titles with ease. Hello everyone, my name is Taki, and this is part 3 of my Should You Buy It series, where I cut through the initial impressions to give you a concise overview of some of the most expensive gaming devices on the market. Today we're going to cover the most expensive device that I've ever done on this channel, the GPD Win 2. The 2019 refresh of the Win 2 features an Intel M.3 8100Y processor with a UHD 615 GPU. It comes with 8GB of LPDDR3 RAM, 256GB of M.2 SSD storage, a 9600 mAh battery, and a vivid 6-inch 720p display. Just as a quick comparison to people that may have one, this device is comparable in size to either a GPD XD Plus or a DSi XL with a little extra thickness and an obvious increase in weight. The bottom of the Win 2 holds our M.2 storage drive, which can be accessed by removing a single screw, but you will need to remove the entire backplate in order to access the battery. Another prominent aspect of this side of the case is the fan intake, which should be centered just enough not to be obstructed by your hands when you're holding this device. I do want to mention that I've already done a teardown of this device once before to poke around, and in doing so I ended up scratching the perimeter of my case trying to pry this thing open. This device uses ABS material, and it very well may be possible to open this up without causing any noticeable damage, but some of the clips that hold this thing together are very strong, and that's ultimately why my Win 2 is not still in pristine condition. While I'm here, I do want to point out that this device doesn't suffer from the same issue that I pointed out in my XD Plus review, wherein I talked about how it was possible for the analog sticks to touch the LCD screen under certain situations. Thankfully, this isn't possible on the Win 2 due to the added recess in the control area and the metal on the top case. And again, a quick comparison with those other two devices to show you the added thickness in the Win 2. On the back we have a selection of ports, and although they do get the job done, I would have loved to see more. The first is a USB Type-C port that's used for charging, USB function, or video out. You also have a headphone jack, one USB 3.0 port, a reset button, the fan exhaust, an SD/XC slot with support for up to 2GB of additional storage, and a micro HDMI out port. You operate the mouse functions on the Win 2 with a combination of shoulder keys when in mouse and keyboard mode. I originally wasn't a fan of these trigger keys because I do think that they could have been made much better given how much space is available on this device, but I have grown used to them. Out of the three, the L and R3 keys are without a doubt the best due to how sturdy and quiet they are compared to the other two. The primary trigger key uses the same type of switch that's found in some gaming mice, so this thing can sound pretty loud at times, especially when the fan is on low. The secondary shoulder key is easily the weakest link in this entire device due to how cheap it feels. If I show you the key from the side, you can see just how easy it is to wiggle this thing back and forth in its slot, and it's this key that took the most time to get used to on the entire device. It's just strange that they gave this key this much play when they could have just as easily enclosed it to limit its movement like they did with the other two. It is a minor annoyance, but it is worth mentioning since this device is powerful enough to run several systems that rely on a secondary shoulder key. When we finally take a look at the inside, a few things here are going to look very familiar to you if you own an XD Plus. The analog sticks and the D-pad are both physically and functionally identical between the two devices. The sticks have a small amount of travel, which is suitable for the systems that run on this device, although I would have liked if the sticks were a little bigger than they are. The D-pad is also decent, and even though I didn't like it at first, it does work well. Most importantly, pressing down in one direction doesn't result in input from any of the adjacent directions like it does on the Mochi i7, so this shouldn't be a problem for those of you that want to use this over the left analog stick. I do want to point out here that my up directional key seems to be a little stiffer than the other directions, and I've been meaning to see if I could fix that, but I haven't had a chance to. My only gripe with this is that I wish it came with a textured surface, since it can get pretty slippery when this device heats up. Next to this is the switch that flips the unit between mouse and keyboard to controller mode. The ABXY keys are probably my favorite on this device. I like the design, shape, and feel. I think it was a really nice touch to print 2 different sets of input keys on the buttons themselves. It's a small touch, but it's something that no one else is doing right now. These keys have a small amount of travel with a nice tactile response when pressed all the way, and the sound they make is audible without being overbearing. I also like the ergonomics of the Win2 more so than some of the other devices that I've covered already. As you hold it in your hands, your thumbs can easily switch between the center and the outside, and the whole device fits firmly in the palm of your hand. You may have to scoot your hand slightly to get full range over the keyboard, but that is to be expected. The stereo speakers are located just under the analog sticks, which does seem like a strange design choice, even if your thumbs won't necessarily ever block them. Finally, I want to talk about the keyboard since this is both a pro and con at the same time. The keyboard is small enough that it doesn't increase the overall size of this device, but I don't find it to be as functionally useful as the one in the Micro PC. This keyboard is also not backlit, which was a feature that I really loved about the MPC since it made it easier to use at night. The main thing that I don't like about this keyboard is the fact that it's super easy to get stuff stuck between the keys, and it isn't nearly as easy to clean as the rest of the device. That being said, they did do a good job of packing this tiny space with all of the keys that you would really need for day-to-day operation. I haven't talked about mouse functionality yet, but it is important since it's another thing that you are going to have to get used to. You control the mouse by using the right analog stick along with the L and R shoulder keys. Beyond the fact that I don't like interacting with Windows in this way, I can't tell you how many times I wish this could be used with one hand by default. Due to the nature of left click placement, you're ultimately going to need to use your left hand just for mouse clicks. It would have been nice if the left stick could be used for mouse input in conjunction with the right, or if the ABXY keys were mapped to mouse input since they are essentially useless out of the box when you are in mouse mode, and it just feels like a missed opportunity. This is just a personal request, but if they are going to do these sticks again, it would have been nice to have a DPI switch on the fly beyond just using the mouse acceleration key. The Win2 is already pretty well documented at this point on YouTube, but some of what's out there simply is not applicable to the 2019 refresh, which is why I think they should have done something to delineate between the 8100Y version. An example of this is the Intel Graphics control panel, which you need if you want to take advantage of custom resolutions in order to improve gaming performance in some demanding titles. This is something that came with the drivers in the original Win2, but you can only get this panel via the Windows Store since the drivers in the 8100 don't support custom resolutions. I also want to talk about the fan, and that goes hand in hand with the battery. You can get excellent battery performance out of this device if you take the time to find and tune some power values to better suit your CPU. There are a variety of things that you can use for this, but the easiest one is a piece of kit called the XTU Manager. The gist of what you're doing here is undervolting your CPU in order to lower your temperatures and increase your battery performance. Lowering your temperature at a given wattage will allow your CPU to run at a higher frequency before it hits thermal throttling, but the amount that you can undervolt is different for everyone, so you will need to test out a bunch of different situations until you find things that work for you. Making your system more efficient in this way is also some of the only control that you have over the 8100Y since the BIOS is very locked down on this refresh compared to the one that came before it. Now let's finally kick off the best part of this device, which is its stellar emulation performance. I don't want to waste any time going over the lower end systems because they all run flawlessly on this device, even at TDP values as low as 2 to 3 watts in most cases. PSP is also very easy to run, and even demanding games run without any issues with graphical improvement options enabled. I already have other options for handhelds that run PSP well, and to be honest, I wouldn't pick this up if that was your primary concern because there are much better devices out there for your money than the Win2. That being said, even the Mochi i7S, which is the most powerful Android gaming system out right now, can't run some of these games like the Win2 can with 2x and 3x resolutions without losing frames. PlayStation 2 is really where this device starts to shine when compared to other devices on the market. It has no issues running popular titles like Final Fantasy X, Dragon Quest, and Kingdom Hearts. It's also worth mentioning that even though these games can run on Snapdragon processors fairly well, the PS2 emulator on Windows is superior to the stolen Android port in every way, even if it itself is inferior to an actual PS2 in some regards. For more demanding titles like God of War, you may need to enable more performance hacks in order to achieve a smooth frame rate. As long as you don't mind a slight deviation from real hardware, you will enjoy PlayStation 2 on the Win2. Now let's move over to GameCube and Wii. These two systems run very well on the Win 2, even at higher resolutions. I recorded a few of these games in OBS on the device itself, and even with that added demand, the system runs great. I tested Luigi's Mansion, Double Dash, Resident Evil 4, and Smash at standard aspect ratios with no problem. I used the 4:16:9 option with the widescreen hack at 1.5x resolution for Wind Waker and Twilight Princess, which both look amazing on this device. On the Wii, I tested both Mario Galaxy games and Smash with only some minor hiccups between some scene transitions here and there. I also want to talk about 3DS, which, as you already saw from the intro, can run very well on this device. This software is obviously still being improved all the time, so more games may very well end up being playable down the line, but I found 3 that run smoothly on the Win 2. For all 3 of these titles, you will end up seeing better performance after you build up your shader cache from playing. A good example of this is A Link Between Worlds, which runs at 54 to 56 FPS when you first leave your house before running at 60 FPS after you've built up your cache. Alpha and Ultra both have this issue, but it's primarily only present when you see a new Pokemon for the first time as they enter the scene. Beyond that, the games run at 60 FPS, but they do require a decent TDP to run well, so you are going to run through your battery pretty fast. Building up a shader cache is also very important for Wii U and the Breath of the Wild. I actually went and deleted the cache that I built just to illustrate how this game runs without any cache at all. I wouldn't say that this game is really worth playing at this point, since you would obviously be better off running this on a computer or official hardware, but it is cool to see that this game does run on this device as more than just a slideshow. I did originally plan on cutting my emulation tests there, but I kept getting an itch to try some of the more demanding systems out there. I saw a video from back in 2018 of Let's Go Pikachu running at 10 FPS, and I thought it would be cool to see how much the emulator has improved since then, and I was absolutely stunned by what I found. Using the latest build, you can see that the battle scenes run at 30 FPS with some minor glitches. Outside of battles, the game runs at a maximum of 22 FPS from all of my testing. This does, however, require some significant external cooling of the device to keep the temperatures down so the CPU can ramp up to full speed. The game also runs at full speed whenever you are indoors. My feelings on this are pretty much exactly the same as Breath of the Wild on the Wii U. I think it's cool that this device can run at least one Switch title at this point at playable speeds. Other titles like Pokemon Sword and Mario Odyssey are much further from being considered playable at this point. That's essentially all of the emulators that I wanted to cover, but emulation is really only half of the reason to buy this device in the first place. It is also very capable of running thousands of PC titles, new and old alike. This is probably the aspect of the Win 2 that's already been covered here to death on YouTube by LowSpec and others, so I would suggest to just search if there's a video out there on a game that you want to make sure can run on the Win 2 before you buy it. While there are plenty of games that I do enjoy playing on the go, I am a little conflicted. The Win 2 isn't cheap, and if you're someone that can afford to buy one, you probably already have a computer that can put this little guy to shame. I'm all for playing games that don't require too many sacrifices to run on this device, but I'm less likely to want to put up with any games that need to look like a potato in order to run. In cases like that, you'd be far better off streaming those games from your PC to the Win 2 to take advantage of the good controls and great screen. You'd have way more enjoyment and far better battery life doing so. I want to close off this review with some of my thoughts after using this device for several months. I think the easiest thing to say is that this is definitely the best gaming device on the market, largely due to a lack of competition in this niche right now at the high end. It's one of the few devices out there that has a functional HDMI out slot, but it also has support for video out over USB Type-C with touchscreen support. This entire device can easily fit in my bag on the go without adding much weight to my daily carry. Even with how much I like this device, there are a lot of things that I would change if I could. As I've already stated, I'm not a fan of using analog sticks to control windows. It just doesn't come close to being as good as a trackpad, and this is coming from someone that produces this entire channel on a ThinkPad with a tiny red nub. I also really miss having the ability to disable the fan like I could with the MPC. That was perfect for times that I wanted to record some voiceovers with the least amount of background noise as possible. I also don't like how locked down this device is compared to the prior Win 2 unit because there are a few performance options that you simply do not have access to. I haven't mentioned this yet, but the most annoying thing to me is just how much of an improvement you get in performance from shelling out loads of additional money for third-party options that should have been part of this base product. I don't want to go out and buy a $600 product and find out that I can get drastic improvements in performance by spending another $100 for something else. GPD has enough expertise to be able to make these types of modifications in-house during the R&D cycle. If they want to justify the high price tag of their devices as bigger companies like Dell start to enter this space, they are going to need to up their game. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this review of the Win 2. The successor to this guy is probably going to launch at some point this year, so I do think that this thing is going to become more affordable as time goes on. As it stands, you do get a lot for what you're paying for, and there really isn't anything remotely comparable on the market right now. If this video helped you make up your mind one way or the other, or you enjoyed it, please consider leaving a like below and subscribe to the channel if you aren't already. It does mean a lot. These reviews take a lot of time to produce, so all the support helps. I'll catch you here next time with another review. Now go out and enjoy the rest of your day. Taki out.